everybody, and welcome back to the show. The Atheist Experience is live December 15th, 2002. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrien, my co-host. Thank you for joining us on this lovely weekend. This show is sponsored by, as always, Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA has its weekly meetings at Hot Jumbo Bagels every Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. That's downtown at 307 West 5th Street, between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria in North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be January the 5th, and we are still working on squaring away our lecture, and if we have him, hopefully we'll be able to announce that next Sunday. So, what else do we have? Godless Gamers meets every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at the home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. And Atheist Happy Hour is a Thursday evening little do that takes place about 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish. People trickle in all night. That happens at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is near the intersection of Interstate 35 and Highway 183. Like I said, if you show up about 7:30 and you don't see anyone there, I recognize, don't worry, hang loose. The table will fill up as the evening goes along. The Nonprofits is the ACA's weekly internet radio show, which plays on the atheistnetwork.com website. It's an MP3 stream, and there is a live chat room feature that you can use to interact with the program. It's hosted by Jeff D. and Russell Glasser, and guests include just whoever they rope in that day for being on the program. Vic Farrow is on occasionally. I just talked to Arlo Pignati, who's been very popular on this show. He's doing his Holy Paraphernalia Mania. For some reason, I was wanting to say like Holy Roller or something or another, but it's like Holy Paraphernalia Mania. Yeah. Apparently, I just talked to Arlo before the program, and he said that he'd been talking to Jeff maybe about doing some Nonprofits episodes together. So hopefully, you can't. You could conceivably, Arlo could conceivably do his show, his presentation on the radio show, because they could run maybe a slideshow type thing. Yeah,
it's a lot of graphics, and so just like they did the
Washington report.
The Washington
exactly.
Thing. Yeah, exactly.
So that could work out actually pretty well.
We have.
Yeah, that could be fun actually.
Yeah.
And they could maybe devote the whole 90 minutes to that, and you can still have like cut away after half an hour like we do for callers. Now, there's a possibility that Arlo will be giving his presentation, ever popular presentation at our February lecture. Yes. We're going to see how that squares away. But I think that's looking really good.
Yeah. And he did say all new material.
All new material. All new, new weird little Christian knickknacks and doodads and goodies that he's collected.
Yes, not to be missed show.
So, anyway, Nonprofit Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. So fire up your PCs. The University Atheists and Agnostics is a registered UT student organization that has just had a very successful first semester. And so they're going to continue to have their 4 o'clock in the afternoon Friday meetings on campus. But for next semester, they still, they met in 310 Parlin during the fall semester. They don't know exactly yet where they're going to meet for the spring semester. But of course, Charles will tell us as soon as he knows. But that has been very successful in its first semester, the first really serious atheist group at UT that I know of. Since I've been in Austin and since there have been scattered attempts.
Yeah, ethical societies and secular groups.
That kind of thing, yeah. But if you are a UT student or faculty member, the email address to write for information on that little group is uaa@mail.utexas.edu. And I'm sure Charles will be very happy to fill you in. But congratulations to Charles, by the way, for getting that group going. Really hit the ground running with that. So, all right. I do believe that that's all of the, that's the usual announcements. So if you'd like to find out more about our fun little gang, you can visit our lovely website at atheist-community.org. Find out more about us. And I think it's time for the news. What's going on in the world?
Okay. I got a few stories here. First one was on Thursday. Our President Bush signed an executive order that makes it easier for religious groups to perform social services work to receive grant money from the federal government, even if the religious group employs selective hiring practices. He has now signed in, officially, the faith-based initiatives and helping these groups get money. Yeah. Now, how these are actually being positioned is it's not the religious side that actually gets the money. They cannot use the money for any specifically religious process. They can't use it to, hold church services or something like that.
Oh, really?
Well,
they can't, but will they? That's the concern. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm thinking they're kind of, kidding themselves. If they think this isn't actually going to go toward, be funneled in some fashion towards the actual.
Well, Bush did the same thing here in Texas when he was governor. He had the same sort of program going on, and very similar. And it's known that one of the organizations that got public monies here in Texas, I think in Dallas, some religious charity group, they took $6,000 of the taxpayer money that they got and bought Bibles with it. So that's not. So I mean. Because the thing is, there's no oversight. These groups have been expected to police themselves, and will they? Of course not. Yeah.
Well, the money from my understanding, they're not actually going to give it to any religious organization. So if a church, for instance, wants to set up a soup kitchen, or for instance, they would have to set up a separate organization to do that. Right. And the money could be used to set up the soup kitchen, but they can't use it to, have a Bible study group or something like that.
He's enacted this measurement, right, in order to encourage this sort of laundering of, or this funneling of money through legitimate front organizations into the. Come on,
federal funded laundering, religious money.
So laundering isn't the right term, but funneling more. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, we can't raise money for this, so we'll set up another thing, and then kind of let the other group borrow a little if they need any.
Well, Bush does say, I recognize that government has no business endorsing a religious creed or directly funding religious worship or religious teachings.
But we're going to do it anyway.
That is not the business of the government. Yet government can and should support social services provided by religious people as long as those services go to anyone in need, regardless of their faith.
Well, now that's a thing. So if he recognizes that, okay, fine. But again, I think that it is. It's naive to think that these...
Exactly. As it's set up, it sounds perfectly fine. I don't mind giving money to a church to specifically set up a soup kitchen, a homeless shelter, job training aid, something like that, if it is used specifically for those purposes. I just don't think that it's going to be quite that easy.
Well, and also, any of these sort of social services that religious organizations provide, right, they are inextricably tied into the religious aspect of that group, where there's a church sponsored by a church or what have you, because that's why it's called faith-based. Yeah. Because the charity that they do is rooted in the faith that they profess, and I think and part of that is also proselytizing that faith.
Of course.
I mean, there's no way you get around that. I mean, if they weren't faith-based, if they weren't out there using their faith as part of the charity that they provide, we wouldn't be calling them faith-based organizations. Yeah. In the first place. So that's that's kind of again, it's just a very unrealistic and I think naive. Yeah. But again, I don't. I don't know. I mean, I don't think for a minute that he really, could this just be what he's telling the TV cameras, or make it all seem up and up? I mean, Bush has never been subtle about how he, his own personal religious convictions, and about how he doesn't mind, he thinks that religion ought to, play a stronger part in.
Is look into what kind of funding government is already giving to organizations that do this type of work. Yeah. Because again, why can't a church set up a completely separate organization, offer these services, which is what they have to do for this to get funding? Yeah. Why can't that separate organization get funding as it is now?
I think that they do that. I think that does. I think that is in place. So, maybe one of our viewers, if they know more than we do about it, can fill us in on that.
How to get funding now? But I know, how is this any different?
But there are independent organizations set up by churches that provide social services and that provide charities.
Exactly.
That do get federal funding.
Exactly.
So again, why is this necessary?
Yeah, what's the difference here?
Yeah. So, and of course, the thing that I think has a lot of civil libertarians kind of hot under the collar about this particular thing, of course, is that, as you mentioned at the beginning of the article, they can discriminatory hiring practices. Yeah. That other groups, they can hire based on religion. Yes. Yes. That's what we're getting ready to say. I mean, but they can also decide not to hire based on religion.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. We're only going to hire the nice Christians in the group or something like that.
And secular organizations getting the same sort of government funding have strict anti-discrimination laws that they must adhere to, which these faith-based organizations are going to be magically exempt from. Yeah. And that's not fair.
If this is a separate organization, are they allowed to discriminate in their hiring? If it's a separate organization, it's not the church.
Well, they shouldn't be, because if other secular organizations are not allowed to discriminate, then if the church sets up this ostensibly separate, secular, soup kitchen thing, then they should have to abide by the same laws.
If the government wants to help people, let them help everyone, not give money to certain groups that are only going to help a certain section of the population, being they, Christian, Muslim, whatever.
Yeah.
So
again, it's all very, clearly this is his sort of, the payola with the religious right that he's, who've always been supportive of him. And so this is him kind of delivering on his favors that, but I don't know. I mean, again, this is a thing, this is a cause for concern because, what this looks like this could be the ground floor of the religion tax that a lot of people have really been worried about, where your tax dollars are going to have to could be going to fund religious organizations that, religions that you don't approve of.
Yeah.
And if you're going to give it to the Christians, you got to give it to everybody.
Yeah.
But
how do they decide what is a religion anyway, according to this? Again, who's religious? Are we religious?
Well, we've already seen examples of how people in office who are Christian. What was the report a few weeks ago where the one guy who was it who said that Wicca's not a real religion?
Oh, that guy. Yeah, that was some military thing, wasn't it? I think it was
something like that. We reported on a couple. We should dig that story up. But but there was some official who had basically
they wanted to open prayers in the courtroom.
That's it. Yeah.
And it was a Wiccan who volunteered to do this.
Yes.
To have all faiths represented.
Don't remember what state it was in.
And they just kind of said,
it's not a real religion.
Yeah.
And so.
So is the government going to say that a Wiccan now isn't a religion, so therefore they can't get funding to set up their soup kitchen?
Well, that's how the religious right would have it. The Christian right would have it.
Well, of course, we know what they want. But.
But they're the ones who are all over Bush, to get him.
But hey, Wiccans have faith.
But see, this again, I hear this double standard again now from every Christian I talk to. Where when I mention the whole faith-based initiatives idea. Of church and religious organizations getting taxpayer money, they're like, yeah, why shouldn't we? It's a great idea. And I said, okay.
As long as it's my religion, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so what about a Scientology group getting taxpayer money? Oh, no, weird.
Yeah. So again, they're just a cult. They're not a religion.
So it's pretty clear that at least, where a lot of Christians are concerned, the term faith-based initiative means Christian initiative, and other faiths can, go, sit in the back, so.
Yeah. So according to this, I haven't listened in the March on Washington. Michael Newdow, who did the Ten Commandments or the Pledge of Allegiance case, he had basically said that as far as the government is concerned, we should be considered a religion. We should promote ourselves as a religion to therefore get the benefits that being a religion provides. I still have questions on that. I haven't heard his speech yet. I do have it. I just haven't.
I've heard Jeff and the guys have talked about it on the radio show.
But according to that, I mean,
well, again, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I would want that. I don't think that. It's just we're here every week on the show, we're explaining to callers why atheism isn't a religion. So I think that then if you were to blur that line and say, well, okay, for legal purposes, we ought to be thought of one as I don't know that that's necessary. I don't think that. I think that it is enough. I think that atheists have enough in terms of the constitutional law on their side. Yeah. When we are the ones out there saying, no, look, the government shouldn't be out there making school children recite prayers,
giving benefits to religion.
Yeah, and putting the Ten Commandments or one set of religious rules in public buildings and not having I think we've already got. Those of us who are who are pro church state separation, whether atheist or not, right? Like Americans United for Separation of Church and State. That's Barry Lynn's group. He's a reverend. He's a Christian minister. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think we have in terms of constitutional law, I think we've already got enough the facts on our side, enough to legitimately make cases. Yeah. For, why the government shouldn't be out there trying to give special favors and dispensations to religion without atheism itself then trying to pretend to be a religion for whatever legal reasons Michael Newdow thinks we should have. Yeah. So I don't think I agree with Newdow on that one.
Well, have you heard his speech?
I haven't heard it, but again, I've listened to nonprofits and Jeff and the guys have talked about the Washington trip extensively. And so I've, from at least what I've heard Jeff D describe and Vic.
Well, I think Jeff is more on Newdow's side, as in he would agree with that philosophy. Now, again, exactly the reason behind that, I'm not too sure. Maybe he doesn't agree. But that's kind of the impression that I got, after hearing him. And so, like I said, I want to listen to the speech. I want to see what he's got to say, and
maybe Jeff will call us and tell us what New Dawn really said. Yeah, clear that up. So, all right, what else is happening?
All right, Cardinal Law. We had a story about him just the other week, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stories about this guy.
Yeah, well, yeah, there have been lots and lots and lots and lots of stories. Yes.
Well, he's now unemployed law, isn't he?
Yes, he has resigned as Archbishop. Yay!
Day late and a dollar short. Now, in fairness, before you jump into the article, in fairness, as much as I want to be afraid of this guy, he did try to offer his resignation in May.
Yeah.
And the Pope turned him down.
Okay.
So, which clearly says this whole covering up of the pedophilia scandal does go right all the way to the Vatican.
Exactly.
So it's not just a Boston thing. But anyway, please continue.
Yeah. And what he's got here is it's actually the Pope has accepted his resignation now. Mm-hmm. So he is officially not going back to archbishophood. And he said, I am profoundly grateful to the Holy Father for having accepted my request to resign as Archbishop of Boston. It is my fervent prayer that this action may help the Archdiocese of Boston to experience the healing, reconciliation, and unity which are so desperately needed. Now, the problem with this, from my memory, it was last week we had the story where he said he's not going to resign because he wants to stay in the position and help the healing. Has he completely changed his mind?
Well, it just depends on how much abuse he's been getting from the.
Because I did notice over the week they had the stories. I saw like 5 or 6 different stories.
Yeah.
Other priests clamoring, saying resign, resign, resign.
Yeah.
People in the church.
Actually,
everybody was.
Quite a few.
They had like 10 stories.
Well, not everybody.
Everybody's clamoring for his resignation.
There were quite a few priests in the Boston Archdiocese who wanted him to stay.
Well, apparently not enough.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
thankfully.
but what's creepy is that there is a significant number of them who still didn't want the guy to go.
Yeah.
And so that's just, again, I think you should take it with a grain of salt. Any sort of gesture that the church is making now towards any kind of, reconciliation or restitution for this whole big scandal, they wonder why we all just don't take them seriously or we're just continue to be skeptical about their sincerity.
Yeah.
In wanting to really, heal these wounds. It's kind of, when they're still, something 35% of the clergy in the Boston area did refuse to, sign the letter requesting his resignation. God, that's a lot.
A third of them.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, it was all over the news last.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's
ridiculous. I mean, it's not like he is, alleged of this or something like that. I mean, it's obvious what he did.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's kind of ridiculous. But at least he is out now, thankfully.
Oh.
So.
That's something, I guess.
Yeah. As you say, dollar late, dollar short, day late.
Yeah,
but,
day late.
Oh, well. Yeah. Okay. Next story. There is a new bill that they're trying to push through in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, that's amazing.
Exactly. To make it a little more difficult for women to get abortions. Yeah. Now, regardless of where you stand on the abortion issue, and there are good arguments for both sides, I won't get into that. This bill, which thankfully they say has almost no chance of passing, would force women who want an abortion to go through a trial and have a judge sign a death warrant for an execution. They would
Jesus.
Legal representation.
God.
What this bill is trying to do is legal representation for the fetus and balance its rights with the rights of the woman before granting an abortion. Which all sounds well and good, but again, going to a judge to get a death warrant so you can perform an execution. Let's talk about loaded imagery.
Yeah, it's just a tad extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, which is basically why even opponents of abortion are basically avoiding.
Yeah, they're backing away from this one.
Exactly. I mean, it's so extreme.
Yeah.
That they're kind of saying this is a little bit nutsy.
Yeah.
I love. These people annoy me.
Now, who is the name of the guy? Now, this is a state thing. This is not federal.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
but just to embarrass him, what's the name of the guy who has put this forth? Because there's got to be a way to contact him and let him know, boy, you're just out of your mind.
State Representative Bobby Franklin. Let me repeat that. State Representative Bobby Franklin, a Republican.
Okay.
Said he pre-filed the bill last month in the House to recognize rights, blah, blah, blah. The bill went unnoticed until recently when lawmakers began preparing for the upcoming January 13th start to the session. For the last 30 years, these little boys and girls have been receiving the death sentence, but there hasn't been a trial. They've been put to death without any due process. These are little boys and little girls that we need to protect.
Yeah, again, trying to create the visual imagery equating.
Exactly. Make them picture a little 5-year-old, five-year-old girl in a little skirt and the bow in her hair.
That's how
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, that's the image that comes across with these little boys and little girls.
Now, again, if there are legitimate medical arguments why, abortion shouldn't take place, fine, vent those.
Of course.
When you start, this is pure emotionalism. This is manipulative and it's exploitive.
Yeah.
And again, I want to get into a big, abortion debate on the whole thing. But
exactly.
But this is just plain.
There are pros and cons to both sides.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about.
But this is just pure extremism, and
Exactly.
it's amazing that in this day and age, something that's this kooky could even get brought up, before a session. Now, I know they're saying that this has a snowball's chance in hell of passing, but it's just hilarious
that somebody would actually bring this up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what I would like to know how this Bobby Franklin guy would address two questions. The first of which is the practical matter of how would he feel about comprehensive, not just Christian-friendly abstinence only, but comprehensive, health-based sex education in the schools.
Exactly.
Because until someone shows me otherwise.
Well, of course not. We can't talk about condoms in front of kids. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Or just not even condoms, not even, just like, here's how your reproductive system works. If you insert knob A into slot B, this can happen, right? Just this kind of letting kids know what the consequences of the actions are, okay? Yeah. And if you have that in the schools, an educated public tends to make less mistakes than an uneducated public.
Yeah.
And it is now, but even though trends in teen pregnancy are way down,
yes,
from even 10 years ago, still it remains to me just this incredible irony that the very people like him who want to pass all these wacky measures banning abortion
don't want to talk about sex education.
They're also against education.
Exactly.
I know. And so it's just
let's not have abortions. Let's not talk to people about how to prevent getting in the situation where you can use an abortion.
Put our heads in the sand and pretend sex doesn't exist until we get married.
I'm sorry, the world has changed.
And another question that I'd like for him to address is this whole issue of, okay, what about natural abortions? The overwhelming majority of fertilized ova do not attach to the uterine wall, right? Which they just kind of get. So that would make...
Every time women have a period, they have to go to court to get a warrant.
That's right, yeah. So every month, every woman in America has to, or at least has to explain.
I know. You have to explain yourselves to us now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's...
How dare you?
This is just the
wow.
lunatic fringe of kookiness.
That's a death sentence to get an execution.
I mean, the Christian Taliban is doing everything it can to make all the strides possible that it can in our country, and so we just need to.
Yeah.
What worries me is that someday, that something that extreme might not be considered that extreme. It might actually be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that's why we got to keep an eye.
Exactly.
Don't just dismiss these idiots because they are that openly kooky, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, be aware of what they're doing, and even if it sounds kooky, you don't do yourself any favors underestimating an opponent just because he's,
Yeah.
it's just acting like a nut.
Okay, and next story.
Okay.
We all know about the fun time that you can have in Alabama with Chief Justice Roy Moore and his 10 Commandments and such.
Okay.
Another thing that they do in Alabama is they also have statements in the front of their biology textbooks saying that evolution is just a theory. It's not a fact.
In high school, my sophomore in high school, my biology textbook had one in the front.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now
it looked like it was a rubber stamp that they'd put.
Yeah.
But it had one. Yeah.
Well, they do that in Alabama. And now what they're trying to do is get the same thing passed in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Now, I've since heard that this might have failed. This article says that it still has to go towards a final approval.
Yeah. Jeff D reported yesterday on Nonprofits that it had been shot down.
Okay. All right.
I have not seen any news articles confirming that.
Exactly.
Again, if we can get that article that Jeff cited, we'll try that. But anyway, what are they?
But yeah, one of the board, the disclaimer they were actually wanted to have in the books was that evolution still leaves many unanswered questions about the origin of life.
Well, sure it does.
Study hard and keep an open mind. Someday you may contribute to theories of how living things appeared on Earth. But of course it does.
Yeah.
So does biology, physiology, physics, everything. We don't know it all yet.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yeah. But see, remember, these are religious fundamentalists, and what does religious fundamentalism?
They claim to know it all.
Yeah, they just claim to have all the answers.
I'm sorry, they have less answers than we do.
Well, but again, another thing about just addressing that particular criticism of science specifically.
Yeah.
Remember, back in February when there was the intelligent design debate at UT, Kurt Durston, who was arguing for the ID side. One of the underlying theses of his whole position was that, evolution through natural selection is, it's a bad explanation because it leaves a lot of these unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And so his whole point was, the more unanswered questions your theory leaves, the worse your theory is. That was kind of at the whole heart of his argument.
Okay.
But then he's advancing this intelligent designer, and he's got all these weird mathematical formulae about functional information and how much you need to do stuff, and if you go above a certain threshold, which kind of changes a lot. He has since changed his threshold, apparently. Yeah. But he says that, beyond that, it requires intelligent design. And one of the questions that was asked, in fact, Jeff D asked, we were able to ask questions on a sheet of paper and submit them. And Jeff's was, okay, how many bits of, how much functional information would be required to create the designer you propose?
Yeah.
And where would that information come from? And he basically hemmed and hawed and said, I don't have to answer that.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. And
yes,
so ultimately, what that ended up doing essentially was he ended up refuting his own argument.
Yeah.
Because what was at the heart of his argument was, well, if your theory leaves lots of unanswered questions, you've got a bad theory. What he has is one big unanswered question.
Yeah.
That's bigger than the whole universe.
Exactly.
So that's a lot worse than what than anything evolution could.
Yes.
For all of the questions that evolution still has unanswered, it doesn't have this big one that's bigger than everything.
Yeah.
So
evolution through natural selection, yes, it doesn't answer it all.
Yeah.
But we're working on it. So.
Anyway, evolution doesn't really have to do with the origins of life. That's abiogenesis.
Exactly.
But the development, the changes in gene frequencies.
Yeah.
Biodiversity, that's what evolution explains.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a whole different...
And one of the board members, I guess, during the discussion said, I don't believe I evolved from some primate. Well, frankly, I don't really care whether he believes he came from it or not. What do the facts show? Yeah. There are lots of things that I don't like, and I would prefer not to believe them, but that doesn't make it true. Yeah. Look at what the facts actually show.
Yeah.
So
the thing about scientific truth is that science doesn't care what you believe.
Exactly.
Science doesn't care what your agenda is.
Exactly.
Science doesn't care what preconceived notions you might have about the world. Science is just in the business of looking at evidence and drawing factual conclusions based upon what's really out there.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't conform with what you believe,
too bad.
Yeah.
Take it.
Oh well.
Suck it up.
Rise above it. Come on. Well, it's a live call-in show. We have just a number to call us up and ask us stuff and give us a piece of your mind, 477-2288. Anyway, I do believe that very soon we have a couple of end-of-the-year events coming up. I think next Saturday is our solstice party, and that is going to be at Russell and Virginia's house.
Yep.
Which just seems to be a little great party headquarters now. I mean, it's just, they have a lovely house.
Yeah.
And, I don't think, though, that we're going to have the Life of Brian screening at that. I think has that already happened?
Yes, that was on Friday.
Okay.
Jeff Jones hosted that one.
Well,
and they had that and a few other short clips.
Yeah.
Saturday, Karen hosted a viewing of Hitchhiker's
Guide. Yes, by that.
Andy had a party for the University Atheist Agnostics. Next week, we've got the Saturday party.
Yeah.
So,
So this is that,
my calendar's booked.
Yeah. So this is that festive time of year. I mean, atheists have festive stuff going on at the end of the year too. I've just moved into a new place. Loving it, getting it all kind of squared away. Yes, thank you. I'm ecstatic. And I'll be probably like having a little soiree, housewarming after the first of the year. Cool. Just be personal friends, this kind of thing. But so now we're but we celebrate natural holidays, right? So the winter solstice is our big event, and
yes, and we're actually having the party on the day of the solstice.
That's right,
the 21st.
Right. So next Sunday will be
8:15 p.m.
Yeah. Now next Sunday will be our solstice show. Unfortunately, what we used to do when we were in the big studio next door, was we would just throw open the doors, right? And have the whole ACA could come and actually be on the show. So we would line up.
We invited everybody, but you just got, I think, around 15, 20 people maybe.
Well, that's plenty of people.
But
I mean, that's about as many people as turn up at the bagel shop.
Not the whole ACA, though.
Well, right. But now since we're in the smaller studio, we can't really do that.
Yeah, this room is a fair bit smaller than the old one.
But still, if you want to come out, if ACA members who want to come out next week and be part of the program, or just be our lovely and supportive big studio audience cheering us on.
We'll let you sit behind the banner.
Yeah, feel free. That's fun. So, okay, we're lining up some phone calls right now. But let me see. What was I going to address? I had something from last week's show. I don't.
Something about email, didn't you?
Did I?
Yes, you did on the phone.
Email.
Okay, well, maybe not then.
No.
So fine.
No, sorry, because it's just drawing a complete blank. But we're going to let some of those names come up as soon as they can. Let's see. That's it. I'm just sort of, if you want, I don't know. It's not that, I've been having such a wonderful week. I don't have anything to bitch about. It's just, getting in my new
We've got no one to scream
place.
Damn it.
Yeah. Obviously, I think the big notes of concern right now are keeping an eye on this whole faith-based initiative thing with Bush, seeing where, if anything, if anywhere that goes. But what do you have? What have you found here? Oh, that's what I was going to remember from the email. This little doodad right here.
Email.
No, there's one of our members. Okay. Talked about how he got a visit at his door by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes,
that was what I was going to talk about. That was wonderful.
That was excellent.
Don't want to mention any names. So one of our members, he was on the mailing list, and he showed up at the door, two Jehovah's Witnesses turned up, and he sort of related the crux of their conversation. And
he actually invited them into the house.
I know. Which is
this wasn't a no thanks, slam.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, you want to come in?
He did. And they were really quite surprised to confront, I guess, a talkative and thoughtful, intelligent, well-spoken atheist. And he mentioned so he gave the rundown of the conversation that he had with them. And then he said they gave him some book, which I am dying to see.
Well, they said they would come back.
Oh, they didn't give it to him?
That was kind of my impression from the reading, is that he didn't actually get it, but they were going to come back and give him this book.
Yeah, they said they had some book that was written for atheists.
Yeah, more from a logical standpoint.
Yeah, designed to convert them, and I'm dying to see this. Of course, now that I'm in my new house, I'm hoping that I get my own little door-to-door proselytizer at some point. Just sort of, because I'm lying in wait.
They need to come by when we're having the
lying in wait, yeah. But another thing I mentioned to him was that this was a great conversation, but I would have probably hardballed them a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, explain to me this whole thing of refusing blood transfusions for sick children and shunning family members who go ahead and provide them, which is an incident that happened
in Canada.
Recently in Canada, where there was a 14-year-old girl who was ill, part of a Jehovah's Witness family, desperately needed a blood transfusion. Their religion, or at least the way they interpret Scripture, which is this strange interpretation. I think it's a weird misreading of something actually having to do with animal sacrifice. But they have interpreted this to be a thing in Scripture that bans blood transfusions. So what was happening was that this girl was just not going to get the transfusion and was going to die. And the doctors pointed out to the father, if your girl doesn't get blood, she's going to die.
Yes.
Okay, that's just it.
Yes.
And so he went ahead and I guess did a little personal soul searching or what have you, and went ahead and approved it.
Yeah.
And as a result, his whole family now,
including the daughter,
yes, whose life he saved,
yes,
is shunning him.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just like, they've shut him out.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And this apparently is a thing that Jehovah's Witnesses do. This shunning is this act that as a group, they are known to encourage and perform. If one of the number, does something, that they don't care for, they do this whole invisible treatment thing with them, and it just seems really, really incredibly cold. But when you have a situation where you're clearly just denying reality, right? You have an illness, needs to be treated, somebody does what they have to do, and you still treat them this way. It just strikes me as being completely morally bankrupt.
Yeah,
it's just insane. So I might have asked that question of the door-to-door Jehovah's Witnesses, and who knows, I may get a chance to someday. But
there you go.
We will see.
You'll have to relate to the list if you do.
Yeah, they used to come to our house when I lived in Houston when I was still in high school. They came to our house a couple times. Okay. Now I was much younger. I was already at that age doubting. Yeah. But now I'm much older and have better arguments at hand. And so. But anyway, I just thought that was amusing. So let's talk now to Robin. We got our calls lined up, and it's time to go to him. Let's see what we have to say. Robin?
Yes.
Oh, how you doing?
Good. I got 3 questions for you.
All right, go ahead.
First of all, let me just qualify, say I'm not an atheist, but I'm not a holy roller either, okay? So, but I see your show every now and then.
Okay.
And I just have a couple questions. 3, as a matter of fact. So
go right ahead.
The first one is that you mentioned that the fact of evolution and so forth, the gentleman on your left. My apology, I don't know your name.
Ashley.
Okay. But correct me if I'm wrong, is it not the theory of evolution?
So is gravity.
Yeah.
Technically, yes.
Actually, you can prove gravity.
Well, we can prove evolution.
Yeah, you can prove evolution.
I mean, genetically speaking, right? Let me clarify. Well, I mean, they do. I mean, just if you don't believe us, pick up a biology book. But evolution is basically both, right? There is the fact of evolution, which means that we know that organisms change, and the whole genetic makeup of organisms do change over time.
Right.
Now, the theories of evolution involve how that actually happens,
right?
How those adaptations and changes take place, and that is still a subject for ongoing study. So we know that it happens, but there's still a lot of work to be done, piecing together exactly what the processes are. So that's the theory. Like you have natural selection on one hand, right? Stephen Jay Gould, who recently died, he was a big proponent of what he called punctuated equilibrium, which is instead of this steady, actually there were gradual.
There were sharp points where all of a sudden just bam.
Yeah.
You had a quick and fast-paced changes in genetics.
Right.
So that's where a lot of debate takes place.
I realize that evolution and the changes and so forth that happen in all type of biological organisms and so forth is true. But in the same sense, the statement that was made before was that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that the fact that man came from ape. I believe that happened, but I don't believe that is accepted in the scientific community, that is a fact.
Well, I don't know that. I don't think it's accurate to say that like men came from apes, right? I mean, we like
a common ancestor with apes.
Yeah, we have a like the primate species that exist today. We and they have a common genetic ancestor, I think is the idea.
Right.
Yeah, a very common, when people say, oh, well, I don't think that means we came from monkeys. Well, it's not really what evolution says. There's a big confusion about it. But just to kind of, so we can get on with it, check that website out at the bottom of the screen. Because that's all. We're not biologists, right? So we're not like the experts. We can't tell you, in detail how it works. But this is where you can get like a lot of facts about it.
Gotcha. The second thing was, again, in the same sense, like I said, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not a holy roller. I do believe in God, but in the same sense, I get tired of what I would call holy rollers, or people always coming up to me and ministering to me and trying to push the word of God on me.
Yeah.
And as I do believe in the same sense that, and I support your freedom of speech and so forth, but why do you feel like you have to, in the same sense, almost the analogy of pushing atheism? Because I get tired of hearing.
Okay. Well, that's a fair question. Well, first off, I don't think we're pushing atheism, right? I think that we're here defending atheism. We're explaining atheism. We don't see ourselves as, we're not like this religion who's out to win converts, right? We're people who have this specific philosophical position, which is we don't believe in God. And so, and because that is so uncommon in our culture, and because belief in God and the worship of God is held to be this incredible virtue that everyone has to have, a lot of people find that very confusing. Why would someone not believe in God? So one of the main reasons we do this show is to explain that. Why we're here, why we don't believe in God, why we think it's wrong. And at the same time, we talk about other things. Like we criticize the holy rollers who are out there to shove it down your throat, just like you mentioned. And we're also here to serve as an outreach to other people in Austin who are already atheists, right? Who might not be aware that there's a group that they can go to and they don't have to feel isolated. So I don't think we're not here pushing atheism, but we're here to explain to viewers who might not understand why, how it is that a person can not have religious beliefs and still lead a perfectly content life.
There's a lot of books and articles out there by religious groups and religious people saying that atheists are all bad people, they can't possibly do any good, and it just goes on and on and on. And we're here to show that, we're kind of just like everybody else. So, we don't have horns, we don't kill babies or anything like that. So we're just, hey.
Yeah, there is another though. The point that you made though, I think it's valid in that we actually Dr. Glasser, who was our guest on the show last week, mentioned that said that what we ought to, and we've had an emailer say the same thing, is that it'd be good if if you guys are up here on this program, talking about criticizing religion. Well, shouldn't you make a statement as to what does atheism have that's better?
Yeah.
If you're going to try to replace some meme, some paradigm that people have based their whole lives on, and tell them, well, that's not right. Okay, well then what can you offer in exchange? And my response to that is generally that I don't know that we're trying to do that, right? We're not trying to change and trying to tell people, you shouldn't do, you shouldn't have the right to a specific belief that you want to hold.
Yeah.
But in terms of why it is that we disagree with religion, well, when people call us up and say, well, why don't you believe in God? Or if you think this, then please explain that. We'll give those explanations. And I think that we do that in a sense. And I think that just by our example on the program, we also show, how it is that, again, you don't need belief in the supernatural to have contentment and a moral compass in your life. And I think anything more than that would be proselytizing, so to speak, and I don't really know that is something that I would feel comfortable doing. Jeff D. earlier has gone on record as saying that, I don't see how you can really avoid, if you hold the atheist position with a lot of conviction, how can you avoid doing the proselytizing? I mean, that would just be part of it.
Yeah.
You should. I think you can argue for atheism and not come off like the atheist version of Robertson, which we don't want to do.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
What was the third question?
Yeah, did you have a third?
Well, that was the main thing. The last thing was, it had to do with, the other one was, science is like black and white and so forth. And that's true as long as it's good science. Because you look back at, in history, Copernicus and all of the different people that were prosecuted by the religions and so forth, and they were forced to make scientific statements that they didn't really believe in, but that was the one that was enforced and so forth. So the qualifier there, good science.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's true. That's true. I mean, those guys were suppressed by the religious authorities at the time and made to recant their findings. But then again, there has been a lot of bad science in the past, but there's bad science now. But the thing is, back then, what they were working with was the best knowledge they had. And right now, what we're working with is the best knowledge we've got. And 200 years from now, there will be a lot better knowledge than we have now. So that's the best you can do with science, is just work with the materials you have at hand.
Right. But an example of like bad science, or the problem with like even in our times, is that, for example, the Congress and so forth not allowing stem cell research and so forth, or wanting to discuss that type of thing, or prohibiting cloning and so forth, and the different discussions therein.
That's
more moral issues and moral mores dictating what science is allowed or is acceptable to do.
Well, specifically, it's religious interpretations of what shape morality ought to take that are standing in the way of that kind of science. I mean, I think that you can make a moral argument that what's more important, saving the lives of people who exist right now by being able to develop these cures, and if you have these embryos that are going to, again, many embryos are just flushed out naturally.
Yeah.
If you have these embryos that are going to be discarded, use them.
Yeah.
Okay, use at least the genetic material that you have, and let's try to do something good for the people who are here now who are suffering.
Exactly.
So I think you can make that moral argument. But we appreciate your call, man, really.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
That's a bunch of good questions. Anything to add?
Nope.
All right.
Next call.
Who's next? Ray. Line 2, it's USA. Hey, you're on the air.
Yeah, this is for you, Martin. I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
In your life, were you ever a Christian? And if so, what made you change from not wanting to be a Christian to becoming an atheist, or not choosing to believe in God?
Okay. I was raised Christian, actually raised in a Baptist church. And it was about as I entered adolescence, I had a bunch of questions that I wasn't getting satisfactory answers to. I had some moral problems with ideas, for example, that the church was presenting me. I couldn't really reconcile the whole ideas of a loving God and eternal punishment in hell, ideas like that. Just had a bunch of more and more questions that I was asking that I wasn't getting answers to that I was satisfied with. And I also began to be very uncomfortable with various things that I saw other people just in the religious community at the time doing. This was in the 80s. We had the moral majority was rising to power. This was really the first wave, I guess, since the Eisenhower era, which was before I was born, where the religious right was really starting to have strong influence, and I was very uncomfortable with that. But it was just a lengthy process all through my teenage years and leading up to when I was finally in college, when I just decided that I hadn't really been given any good reason to hold on to these beliefs, and and so it was not just one event that changed my mind. It was a long process of thinking about it. But
Okay.
I don't have unpleasant memories. I actually have very pleasant memories of being in the junior high and doing various church activities. So it really wasn't that. It didn't leave. It wasn't like a bitter leaving, breaking of ties with the church or anything. But but that's kind of what it was. Just more what I was thinking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure. All right. Thanks. Okay. Well, I guess that's just getting interviews today. What about you, Ashley? What made you?
I was actually brought up religious. My dad was Catholic and still is. We went to church every week. My mom used to go to church, but then my brother's older than I am. When she had him, she stopped going to church, and then me stopped going to church. And so she has the general idea that, there's something out there, don't know exactly what it is. My dad is very Catholic. He goes to church every week and all that kind of stuff. And I went until 11th grade when I finally decided that, no, it just does not make any sense. I abhor going to church. And
See, I didn't like the big service.
Yeah.
I never liked those. It was like, right? I only liked those when they did the communion, because it was sort of like, oh great, I get a little cracker and some grape juice to tide me over until, we go to Luby's, right? I never liked the church service. Hated that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Sunday school was actually kind of fun. And
I never went to that. I did go to catechism.
Yeah.
And that was...
Yes, I was a Protestant church, so
yeah,
I don't know anything about that.
But really nothing all that special.
Yeah.
Mom, can we go Catholic so we can get communion wafers and booze? No, no one's going Catholic. 3 children is enough, thank you.
But... yeah, I just didn't have a problem. We had a big like a rec center and everything, so I didn't have a problem with that. But yeah, I never liked the service was just
and that was the only thing that we ever did was just go to church every week, and it just did not make any sense. It was boring as anything. So
well, it's because I finally got the into my head that what I could do was go up on it was a big church in Houston. And there's a balcony up top.
Okay.
And most Sundays, except for Easter and Christmas, right, it wasn't that packed. So I sat in the balcony, the very back row, and I could nod off. And it's no big deal, so I could just sort of crash and wait for it all to be over. But so I would do that as I got a little older. But then after a while, I just quit going. It was much easier to just quit going.
Yeah.
Okay, now we've got to let some more calls rank up. We have Greg online. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey.
How's it going?
All right. I just want to know what your opinion was of they're wanting to change the Pledge of Allegiance, and understand. Here recently, there's another group of people that are having a problem with Christmas and other religious holidays.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know. My personal opinion is I think that the pledge was much better and more inclusive in its original pre-1954 version, where they didn't require some sort of religious statement. They didn't require under God, and it actually included, it ended with the phrase liberty, justice, and equality. Hang on. Nation indivisible with liberty. Yeah, liberty, justice, and equality for all. That's how it ended originally, I think.
Okay.
So I had to run through it all before I got to clear on the tail end there. So the lawsuit that Michael Newdow put forth had to do. It wasn't so much with let's get rid of the pledge. It had to, and that was a very commonly misreported all over the news. What his lawsuit was specifically about was that it was unconstitutional for the state to require school children to recite it on account of the fact that it had that phrase in it.
Yeah.
So he didn't have not necessarily a problem.
He wasn't trying to change the pledge directly.
He's just trying to say the state shouldn't make you say it.
Exactly.
The state shouldn't make you say it. Now, as I understand it, I mean, the Supreme Court has already ruled that you don't have to say it if you don't want to. But I think that there are situations where, like in a school classroom.
Again, you get a whole bunch of third graders together, and it's the beginning thing to do. The teacher stands up and says, "Okay, we're all going to say the pledge now."
Yeah.
It's
a 10-year-old child isn't going to say.
A 10-year-old child's not going to say, "Sorry, I don't want to say this," and sit out of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
And that puts that child in a really uncomfortable position because if they're like another religion other than the Christian religion, or if they're no religion at all, then they sit down during the pledge, and all their little classmates go, "Why aren't you saying the pledge?" And then they explain that
what kind of weirdo are you?
Yeah, they end up really getting bullied, and it's a very unfair kind of situation to put a child in.
Yeah.
Now, as far as if people have a problem with Christmas, I don't know. I mean, that might be. I don't have a problem with that. I mean. I get a little tired of the traffic and hearing the same songs in every store
Shoppers,
I go in.
Man.
Yeah,
it's Fry's the day after Thanksgiving.
It's horrible.
They had a line down to Kmart.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like 6 o'clock in the morning.
It's insane.
That's ridiculous.
I know.
It was nuts. It wasn't even worth going.
Yeah. So that's why you try shop online. That's how to do it. But,
really.
Yeah, I don't know. I just my view is anybody who doesn't want to celebrate a holiday doesn't have to. I mean, in our group, we celebrate the whole holiday season, right? There's like the winter solstice.
Yeah, why celebrate one day when you could do the whole season? It's so much more fun.
So it's like, I think that there's enough going on in the holiday season to satisfy people of every faith and even people of no faith. So, but if you want to complain about over-commercialism of Christmas and the holidays and too much traffic and too many shoppers, hey, I'm right there with you. I mean, it's getting real out of hand. So, okay, is that it?
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for calling, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. That was some pretty good information on the pledge thing. I didn't know all that.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll find the information for the ruling of on the internet, and where people can go and read that actual decision yourself. All right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, that's a nice guy. Sydney on line 1. So Sydney?
Hi, how you guys doing?
We're good. Hey. How are you?
Hi, I understand you guys don't believe in God, and I don't necessarily believe in the Christian God also. Mm-hmm. And I went through my period of being an atheist when I was younger. But I've had spiritual experiences, or experiences that I chalked up to be spiritual. And I was wondering if you guys believe that there is a spiritual part to us.
Want to start with that?
Not that we have any evidence for it. We have a consciousness, we have thoughts, we have our brain working and stuff like that. I don't believe that there's anything outside of what we've really found. Our thoughts and ideas and feelings and everything like that is brain chemistry. It's not very romantic,
right, because let me tell you really quick one thing that happened to me, although it's been things for things. I was living in Korea. I was stationed. I was in the military. I wanted to really go back to Virginia. They wouldn't let me. They wanted me to go to Kentucky, but I really want to go back to Virginia. So I had a dream that I went to Virginia, and I met these people that I was supposed to work with. Well, all of a sudden, they let me go back to Virginia. And when I went there and I walked in, there was 4 of the people that was in my dream. And then later on, this woman got hired, and she was the 5th one.
Yeah. How many dreams have you had that didn't come true, though?
Oh,
Yeah.
every night of my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean.
so yeah, hitting one out of however many is.
I'm sure you're very sincere. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you didn't have that experience. I mean, I know that a lot of people have had experiences similarly like yours, and they choose to feel that that's kind of what's going on with them. I've never had anything go on like that. I have had interesting coincidences take place in my life. I have had situations where I've been thinking to myself, gee whiz, I sure could use a little money right now. And then a buddy of mine calls me up and says, hey, I have that $20 that you let me borrow.
I wish that happened to me.
But again, see, that's the thing. It doesn't happen all the time. What people do is they'll like selectively remember times when, this happened. And then, of course, the 20,000 things that, the events that don't take place when you need them to. Here's my thing. I think that when I always tend to ask believers, like when they ask me about, well, how do you credit spiritual experiences and what have you? I usually ask them first, well, what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. And what do you mean by the word spiritual? Because I kind of, that's a term that kind of has religious origins, and so I want to know what the believer means. And what I generally get when I hear their description is that they are describing an emotionally fulfilling experience that they've had. That usually either ties directly into whatever belief system they've currently got of a religious nature or a spiritual nature,
right?
And it makes them feel validated and comforted within that belief. It makes them feel like, yes, this is all right.
But it didn't validate what I felt. I actually was scared because, like I said, I'm not a religious person.
Yeah. I'll say like that can happen. You can have that case. Like I said, everyone's different. So I've never gotten like this consistent explanation of what it means to be spiritual, other than that it tends to be a very affirming experience that a person has.
Right.
And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen. I don't credit it to a supernatural source.
Well, what? I thought at one time, and I still think that way a little bit, that we only use, as they say, 10% of our brain.
Yeah, which is a fallacy, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure I don't use 100%.
Trust me, you do. You use the whole thing.
And maybe I just tapped into a part of my brain that governs that, and maybe we just need a part of spirituality just as human beings to keep going, to keep having something, keep having hope. If no one had hope for something, then a lot of people would have given up, like the Holocaust and other bad things.
Yeah, well, we both agree that, we know that we recognize that people have these kinds of beliefs and feelings as a way of kind of maintaining that sense of hope in a world that sometimes seems like it's just too mean and cruel and hopeless. We know that we do recognize that religion does have that value for its believers. Again, though, I think that, I don't have beliefs in the supernatural, but generally speaking, I consider myself an optimist. I think our world there's a lot of problems, right? There's a lot of things wrong with it, but there's nothing that just spitting on your hands and doing a good hard day's work won't, get you through, right?
Right.
So, again, who knows, maybe there are bits of your consciousness that sometimes aren't as acute as others, but you do definitely use all your brain, trust me.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were to go into a hospital and have surgery and have 90% of your brain cut out, you would not walk out of that operation a normal person.
It's not the best way to lose weight.
Yeah, so, but, like my grandmother, who was deeply religious, would tell me of all sorts of, she would give me testimonials of all kinds of experiences that she had. She talked about like a dream system that she would have, this long involved dream, and then following the dream, she would then wake up and find out that my uncle had been in an automobile accident. And, the one thing was tied into the other. She would dream that she was visited by a couple of angels who said, something really terrible is happening. And then she wakes up and finds that news. And I'm not saying that people don't have those experiences, but I'm saying that a lot of things could be, that there are neurological explanations for a lot of spiritual experiences that people have. And I don't think that makes them any less significant. But, evidence of supernatural influence, I don't think so. I think that it's just our brains are amazing organs that we don't know everything about, and we're still learning.
I'm not necessarily saying supernatural. Like, you think it's something outside of yourself. I'm thinking it's incorporated in us, but we just haven't tapped into that part of us. And maybe that is our purpose on this earth, is to tap into spirituality. A lot of people are religious, but they're not spiritual, and that's why they try to convert people. I have my belief, but I'm not trying to convert anyone. If you want to listen, you listen, and you believe, you don't, but I have my own belief.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all anyone can do.
Right.
I do think that people, a part of what we should be doing with our lives is this constant process of learning. I mean, I'm very much interested in learning, like, the intricacies of how my brain works, or doesn't work more often, as the case may be. But I think that there are mysterious, unexplained things. But the thing to do is go out and find what the explanations are and learn stuff. Yeah. And too often, like, what people do, and like people who are like in the religious realm, they'll just make answers up, and the stuff that's kind of satisfies a preconceived idea they have, and they won't want to find out anything more. Then they won't want to hear any information that won't come up that I've got an idea that I have an answer that satisfies me, and I don't want to hear the others. So but thanks for sharing your info. Do you have anything else you want to ask us?
No, that's about it. But
okay.
I enjoy listening to you guys, because I think, you can learn something from everyone. So.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
I had a dream.
Yeah, speaking of that spirituality, it's kind of hinted more in the way of not using all of our brain, potentially. Mm-hmm. And I know earlier on, years ago, I used to do reading on, psychics and telekinesis and all this other kind of stuff, thinking, there's so many people out there who read into this stuff and claim to be able to do it and stuff like that. There must be something there. I don't know exactly what, but there's got to be something there.
I'm sorry.
As in, there are so many different abilities that are supposedly out there. Telekinesis, psychic reading, future things, whatnot. I figured, maybe there is something, who knows? So I did a lot of reading into it. Mm-hmm. But I have heard a lot of explanations recently about why it really just does not back up. Mm-hmm. There are just logical reasons why it can't happen, physical reasons that, we have found, what the brain can and cannot do. Yeah. That there are just, laws of physics that prevent this stuff from happening.
Yeah. Well, and anybody who thinks that they have those powers can win $1 million right away, and just do a test with the amazing Randy. And take care of it that way. But
as Jeff pointed out on the radio show, a couple months back, anyone who has the slightest little ability, I don't care how small of a power it is going to rule the universe.
Well.
They are going to figure out a way to take advantage of this little power to levitate things and rule the world.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, one person possessing, paranormal psychic powers in a world where everyone else doesn't.
Exactly.
Would rule the planet, right? Exactly. I mean, you'd just be in control. And some people might say, like, a question that I always ask somebody who says that they're psychic and says that they can mind read and says they have precognition, they can tell the future and blah, blah, blah. I always ask them, why aren't you rich?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean if you can tell the future,
pick lottery numbers, winning stock, winning horse races. I mean, come on.
And if they say, "Oh, well, I don't do it to satisfy my personal greed," then I can say, "All right, fine.
Do it for me."
No. Win the lottery next week. Yeah. Or give me the lotto numbers. Give me the lotto numbers. I'll play this week. If they're correct, and if I win, I will give all the money to the charity of your choice.
There you go.
Yeah, that'll eliminate the greed factor.
Exactly.
I just want you to prove to me that you can do what you say you do.
Exactly.
And like I had an email exchange for a long time with this woman who said that she talked to spirits and all this kind of stuff. And I said, look, she could talk to the dead. And it's amazing. Any time that you advance some kind of test, right, that you can... That
doesn't work that way.
That's exactly what I said. Look, for example, if you really have these powers, do you realize what you could do for the world of science?
Archaeology.
Exactly. Find Alexander the Great, okay? Ask him where his tomb is.
Yeah.
All right? Every archaeologist in the world will love you. You'll get a Nobel Prize. Contact William Shakespeare. Have him dictate a few new plays to you. I mean, wouldn't it be great if the world
Jimmy Hoffa
had some new? Yeah, ask him where the hell he is. He's under the end zone at some football stadium or something like that. I mean, we could just find out so much information about the world. I mean, if there are these dead entities of dead spirits of
all these
people,
old Aztecs that supposedly had such advanced technology, find out what was going on.
Exactly. And what if the world had a couple new Shakespeare plays? What a great thing!
I know,
right? So anyway, but you ask them that, and they say, "Well, it doesn't quite work that way." Oh darn. Yeah. Well, it's just, and so I'm sorry. I mean, it's just, until I see otherwise, I just think that a lot of these folks are whether they are genuinely deluded about their powers, or whether they are deliberate con artists, and I think guys like John Edward and James von Prague are deliberate con artists. They are. I think what they're doing is they're just exploiting gullible, vulnerable people, and they're doing it for fame and they're doing it for money, and that's really what it's all about. So it's really kind of dismaying. All right, on to David on line 2. See what you have to say about this.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Hey. Thanks for holding.
Oh, no problem. I am one who takes the God of the Bible seriously, so that makes me a fundamentalist, which I don't mind. I guess I got a couple questions. What makes humans human? Or is there any differences between a person and a human?
Person and human, or person and other animals? What do you mean?
I guess, I guess from what you were saying earlier, the caller before actually kind of made this point, I guess. For instance, myself, I'd have to, in the atheist worldview, I think that I would have to say that my name's David, there's no actual David, there's just a anthropomorphic creature that's named David, and I have these brain chemistries that give me my personality, and if I have a girlfriend that I love, I actually don't love her, I just have this brain chemistry that's giving me this desire for this other anthropomorphic creature.
Yeah, well, that
kind of takes a romance out, doesn't it?
Yeah. To say that like feelings and emotions come from brain chemistry doesn't I don't think that makes them any less special.
No.
I don't think that makes them any less significant. I think that the emotional responses that I have, and I think that my personality, I think that what makes you is your consciousness, right? And but to say that my emotional responses are like some sort of chemical reaction to a stimuli, which is the kind of the cold fish Mr. Spock way of putting it. But I don't think that means that they're any less real. I mean, they're not. I mean, if I have an emotional reaction to something, it is genuine. It's from within me. And just because it's just coming from within me and my mind and my body reacting to a thing, but it's still a real experience. If you love, if we're just if you're just a clump of cells and you love this other clump of cells, and the love is all of this chemistry bubbling around in your brain, but that doesn't make it any. That doesn't mean that you're still not David and you still have this girlfriend and that you have these feelings, and that doesn't make that less real. It just means that so it has a chemical source. Big deal.
But we could say that, but in the actual act of loving someone, it's just, and if we actually think we love this person, it's just self-delusion.
No, it's, as you were saying, it's real feelings. It can be explained through chemical processes. Again, there's certain chemistry and stuff that's going on that gives you that feeling, but you're still going to act upon those feelings. You still have that devotion. You're still going to, throw yourself off of a bridge for them or something like that.
Well, no one go that far. But
hopefully there's a constructive purpose to
that's
it.
That's not love. That's delusion. Yeah, that's being crazy if you throw yourself off a bridge for somebody.
You're still willing to do things for that person.
If you just want to talk about the whole nuts and bolts of how stuff works, there is a book by it's a Dawkins book, Richard Dawkins book called Unweaving the Rainbow, and the title is from a quote by a guy who was a contemporary way back of Sir Isaac Newton, who was the founder of classical physics. And this guy was complaining that when Isaac Newton explained the rainbow prismatically, right, through light comes through and is broken down into its da-da-da-da-da, he said this guy complained about Newton doing that, saying, no, you've taken all the magic out of it. You're unweaving the rainbow, right? Rainbow can somehow no longer be special if you know that it's just light coming through the atmosphere and being split into its primary colors, right? Yeah. And so there's this whole, I think some people have this way of thinking that says that if we explain too much, maybe there are certain things that ought to be mysterious. And if we explain them too much, we've kind of taken all of the the magic out of, the what makes them, we've robbed them of what makes them special. Yeah. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that, like I said, I don't think that it makes feelings of love or any sort of emotion that you have any less real or any less special if we just know that it's our brain doing what our brain does. But some people, I think it's just our culture brings us up that way. Yeah. And whether what you have a particular religious upbringing, or it's just it's this meme that's passed through our culture that there are certain mysterious things that maybe we shouldn't stick our nose into because life is just so much more neato if we don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't agree with that, but I know that a lot of people do feel that way.
I guess what separates humans from other animals? Do you have any opinions?
This is actually brought up on the email list in that discussion I think that you were talking about before, in that there's no real difference between us and other animals. It's mostly a matter of degree. We are more intelligent than most of them. We have a higher sense of self. We kind of know that this is me and that's you, and we have this difference a bit more down than most of the other animals do. Mm-hmm. But again, other animals do have, moral codes to them. They may not, they're not quite as sophisticated as ours. They have a sense of self just like we do, just maybe, again, not quite as much. I'm
23. I'm getting in my prime. My grandma she's very old. She can't see. So I guess, does that make me more of a person than her?
No.
Because it sounds like we have a higher state of conscious. It seems like, because we can do these things, therefore we're human. And it seems like...
Well, yeah, this is now getting into like a very much deeper philosophical waters where
I like it.
people have spent like a lot many years debating over this whole issue of what is that one quality, or is there just one quality, or what is it that makes you human? And if it's just that you have this higher level of intellect, then we enter into strange moral waters. Like, well, does that mean we have the right, if we're intellectually superior to other species, to dominate them, or to control, or to rule, or to do what have you? Yeah. And I don't know that there is. Because it becomes a question of because you can, should you? And
again, I don't think it can be defined to any one thing. Again, it used to be that what makes humans humans is we have tool making capability.
But no, there's some animals that do that.
Exactly.
Animals will...
Now we've since found out that there are some animals that do that. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, it's not that one then. Next one down the list is, we have a sense of self. Well, so do some animals.
Yeah.
Moral code. We got that one. Well, so do...
Yeah,
and so it's just going down the list. There is no one specific thing.
Yeah.
It's a conglomeration. It's all of the different factors that make us us.
Okay. Yeah. I heard this quote in an abortion debate. I just want to make sure it's accurate. Darwin, or maybe it was one of his followers, wrote...
I don't think abortion was an issue with Darwin. But.
Yeah. Sex and the Descent of Man. Is that one of his books?
Yeah, that is.
He talks about how women are inferior and stuff. And like if we look over the philosophical and scientific communities throughout human history, women don't measure up. They're not superior as men. Is that a...
I haven't heard that one. I think I would have. Yeah. That could be one of many misinterpretations of what's going on. I know that there are people who... there was a philosophy that came about in the early 20th century that called social Darwinism, which was this weird perversion of natural selection, this whole idea of, let's just deliberately go out and decide that one group is better than other groups and wipe out all the ones that are worse, and that has nothing to do with what natural selection is about. Yeah, but I haven't. I'll look up and I'll check this whole Descent of Man quote. But again, if you want to, a lot of misinterpretations about Darwin are addressed on the Talk Origins website, which we just had the URL up on the screen, and I guess Steve can put it back. Okay. And there's some Darwin facts, fact pages up on that site where they talk about what is it that some fundamentalists have about what Charles Darwin did or did not say. I haven't read Descent of Man. I've read Origin of Species. I've read bits of Voyage of the Beagle. Haven't read Descent of Man, so I can't tell you. But then again, I have to say that. 150 years ago, a lot of people whom we would consider to be great people, right, were living in 200 years ago, 250 years ago, probably did have some ideas that today, by our current moral standards, we would disapprove of, right? I mean, 150 years ago, it was okay to be racist. It was okay to think that maybe women should be like subservient to men. And there are people, like Thomas Jefferson. No one will doubt that he was a great statesman. One of our founding fathers, but he was a slave owner, right? So there were some things that people, if you were to go back 50, 100, 150 years ago in time and talk to some really admirable historical figure, he would probably have a few ideas that you were repulsed by. So I haven't heard this, anything from Darwin saying that women are inferior, but I'll look it up.
Yeah, it might be him or one of his disciples, but
could have been.
It was in the context of the pro-choice was saying we can do this and that, and that's why we're human, and he just brought that up in rebuttal. So
yeah.
So thanks for your time, and
I appreciate your questions, man.
Yeah, I'll
take
probably
care.
Call back and talk about the resurrection. That's what I'm interested in. So.
Oh yeah, okay. do that. That's an interesting one.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay. Pat is on line 3. The calls are just rolling in. We'll see what. Hello, Pat.
Hello, folks.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, and you?
We're all right.
Good. Actually, I wanted to call a couple of weeks ago, but I got, kind of held up. I had to leave.
Oh, okay.
And I was talking about, I wanted to ask you about the psychics, have you seen that one that's on the Animal Planet? She's
Oh, I've heard about it. I haven't actually seen it, but I want to get a copy. I want to see what it is.
She's got a little British accent. And
yeah.
She goes around it's usually behavior type stuff. The dogs aren't.
Yeah.
Listening to the owners, or they're going to the bathroom inside the house, whatever. And,
yeah.
We need to call a psychic right now.
Your pet's really thinking this, and you have to do this, and the behavior will change. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that reminds me. There's a movie a couple years ago called Best in Show, which is this awesome movie about dog shows. Funny. And there's an opening scene. It wasn't a pet psychic, but they were at this pet psychiatrist,
right?
Which is the same thing. And there was the dysfunctional, really high-strung Manhattan couple who were always screaming and bitching at each other, and this was bumming their dog out. And so they're like, now you need to tell him that you're sorry, and the dog is just kind of laying there, right, being a dog, and they're like, we're sorry, and it was hysterical.
The dog knows all.
Yeah, that must be it. So
listen, I wanted to ask you about your T-shirt there, actually. You wear that all the time, outdoors or just on the show?
I actually go out in public like this.
Oh, you do or you don't?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great.
This is just one of the shirts I have.
I'm just curious.
I do change occasionally.
Do you get the Landover Baptist has those?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very funny website, Landover Baptist.
I thought it was just the funniest idea. It's so simple, but it was just so funny, and so I had to go and find one.
The one that I want to get.
It looks good. I like it.
It's a good one. It's very direct to the point. The one I want to get, which might be a bit, because you know me, right?
Unsaved.
There he is, unsaved, on Ashley's manly chest. The one I want to get has the words "damned atheist" in flame letters.
Yes.
That might be a bit too provocative, but hey, we're laughing at ourselves.
One thing I want to say is that I think you all give too much time to the first caller.
Oh.
You got to speed things up a little bit. Tempo, fellas, tempo.
Yeah, it happens. Sometimes
things moving along, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Point taken. Yeah, sometimes it does happen. Some calls get dragged out. So, anything else?
No, that's it, fellas.
Hey, thanks for your call. Appreciate you watching.
Thanks, Sean. Bye.
All right. And Michael on line 1. Hey, you're on the air.
Hello there, gentlemen.
How are you doing?
Oh, just fine.
Thanks for waiting.
I had a question for you both. As atheists, do you subscribe to the idea that perception is subjective? That is, the perception of reality is subjective as opposed to objective?
I would have to say that I do think that there is such a thing as an objective truth. I do think there is. Perceptions, however, can be skewed, right? Mm-hmm. If you are hallucinating, for example, right? If something's going wrong in the old noggin, you can have incorrect perceptions of things. If you are sick, or if you can have an incorrect perception of things, or sometimes people will perceive things through a filter of preconceived beliefs and preconceived notions.
Interesting.
So I think that I think that there is such a thing as objective truth, and I think that the way we arrive at that is through this thing called the scientific method, where we go out, we collect evidence, we examine, and then other people confirm it, and then we end up with a consensus as to what we think the best answer for a particular question is at the time.
So if I understand you correctly, the way that you would arrive at a fact would be the consensus of all these other individuals around you who, by the very nature of being individuals, have a different perception than yours.
Well, they may or may not. I mean,
no, it used to be the common perception that the world was flat. Didn't work out. Again, there is an objective thing out there.
How would you explain color to a colorblind person?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I used to have a blind roommate when I lived in Jester, and I would ask him, you know, trying to do as politely as I could, but I mean, he understood what I was getting at. Was like, so what was the world like to him? How did he perceive the world? And he said, well, I know what you're trying to ask me, and it was very difficult for him to convey to me really just how it was that he, you know, the input that he got from the world around him, and to make me sort of appreciate, you know, his experiences of things. I mean, he could describe it, right, in so many words, but that really wasn't the same sort of way you know, that wasn't the same thing as my being able to really understand it in a first-hand way. I'm sure you know.
Well, sure, because if let's take your friend. If your friend is blind and they were born blind and they perceive the world without the quality of sight,
right?
Yet you have it. How is truth for them the same as truth for you? Who's right? Which one of you is correct?
Well, as in a sense, like for example, he understands that he's blind. That, you know, he doesn't have sight. He understands that, and he understands that there are people around him who do. And when I would give him as best I could a visual description of something, he would just take it in. So in many ways, he, you know, as a blind person, there are certain areas where he does have to rely on a sighted person for certain understanding of things.
The scientific method wouldn't work for him.
Well, in a sense, I mean, you know, he is limited, right? I mean, he has limitations in lacking sight and being blind.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, this is a very good point. You know, earlier you guys were discussing what separates humans from animals, and of course, you have this list of things that you're writing down, and I have to wonder whether or not, you know, we're not a little presumptuous just because we have not, you know, a dog can't speak our language. Does that mean that a dog does not possess a level of intelligence? But by your measure, by human measure, if that's the measure that you're using, then yes, every other species and anything on this planet would be inferior to the human. However, what if you judged with another? What if you could communicate with something like a dolphin or a chimpanzee? What do you think they would think of you?
Well, who knows? I think that'd be great.
First off, a point: we're not necessarily inferior to all animals. It depends on what you're using to measure.
Necessarily inferior.
If you take away, you know, some of the technology and some of, you know, what I have with me and put me against a house cat, that house cat is going to tear me apart. So again, I'm kind of inferior to a house cat, which is yay big. And so again, in that respect, you know, let me get to this question of perceptions, though, because I think that I get a sense of the point you're trying to drive at. Let me kind of give you sort of my ideas on the whole thing. Is that really, you know, there are certain schools of philosophy like solipsism, right? And I've gotten into email arguments with some guys like this before, and I've talked to Jeff D. and some other guys. Where I've talked to some folks who are of this school of thought. Well, how can you really know anything, right? I mean, can we really trust our perceptions and our inputs? You know, the stimuli that we're getting, can we really know that there's this objective reality around us that we're interacting with? And it seems to me that's the kind of philosophical thinking that you can take to sort of a reductio ad absurdum, an extreme.
Really?
Because
let me ask you this: Are your eyes still as good as they were when you were 5 years old?
No, actually they're not, because I have to wear contacts.
Okay.
So that tells me I'm not intelligently designed.
Well, wait a sec. Now here, if you guys, you know, entropy is a concept that scientists accept, right? That all things decay. Generally speaking,
in a closed system, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if your eyes aren't as good as they were at 5, how do you know what you're seeing? How can you trust your eyes? Because they're constantly decaying. Your entire body is getting older and your senses are getting duller. But how do you know?
Well, because I have no other choice, right? I mean, what else am I going to use apart from my sight organs to kind of tell me to give me the visual stimuli of what's in the world around me?
There are other ways to test it, too.
Yeah.
I see this cup in front of me, and I can, double check on that. Yep, as far as I know, it's still there. I can ask him. He's going to agree with me. I can get some kind of camera in here and take a picture, look at the picture, and say, "Yep, well, that backs it up too."
Again,
there are other ways to.
But it's a thing that you have to. I don't see what other choice a person has other than to rely on the senses that they do have. I mean, even if you're willing to accept, okay, maybe I am interpreting this input improperly, and maybe I am not getting the correct input, and maybe I'm having a big hallucination, and this is all a dream that I'm in, but still. Given all those maybes, and from a practical standpoint, what other choice do you have
than to certainly have to put faith in your own physical abilities?
Yeah, I mean, because at a certain point, I mean, I trust my eyes because so far I haven't been given any reason not to, right? Like I've never had an experience where I've walked across a big expanse that I thought was all pavement, and it turned out, and then I fell into off some big cliff.
Well, you bring up a very good point, and so I guess the point that I was trying to make with this whole conversation is that if you're going to put some faith and trust into your eyes and into your other physical qualities, then it really doesn't make you a person that doesn't have any faith.
Well, it's faith that's backed up through practical experience, right? I mean, I'm not using faith when I look at this cup in front of me and say, I believe there's a cup there, because I have other means of confirming that there's a cup there. I can pick it up and it feels like a cup. I can ask my friend Ashley, do you see the cup? Can you pick it up too? It seems that...
And the 100,000 times that he has seen cup, there actually turned out to be a cup there.
Yeah, so at a certain point, right, I mean, once actual experience kind of backs up the input that you're getting, I don't really think it's so much a matter of just taking something purely on faith, right? I mean, faith is a thing that exists in different degrees. There's, for example, I have faith that there's a cup here, and if I pick it up, I can confirm that, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is, I have faith that there's a big invisible magic being ruling the universe. Well, that's a much larger leap of faith. That kind of belief system takes a larger leap of faith than something that you can confirm through, that's more practical, that's in front of you.
What do you mean? I don't know. I don't understand that because...
Okay, for example, if you want to posit that there is a God controlling the universe, okay, I do not have the immediate way of confirming that assumption through practical means as I do of saying, Martin, there's a cup on the table in front of you. Can I confirm that the cup is there? Well, I think I can. But then if you want to go ahead and say, all right, now inside the cup there is a 3-inch high alien being holding a laser gun at you. Well, I don't see him there, and I can't feel him there.
How could you imagine it?
Yeah.
How can you imagine it?
Well, I haven't. Well, I can use my imagination.
Hollywood is
imagination. I mean, human beings are creative to a certain extent, so I can create a concept in my mind. Sure.
So scientifically, can I get rid of your imagination?
I don't think you can, because I would still be using it, whether you would think that you were getting rid of it or not. See, I'm not sure I made the connection.
Well, the point is that there are qualities to your physical being. The scientific research that you are using as the main guidance for your objective reality. Yet there are aspects of that method that you're using that call on things that cannot possibly be proven. For example, imagination, a thought. The scientists have not been able to take a single thought, the quality of a thought, the cellular quality of a thought, and remove it from a person's skull. Until that point, we're all going to have to agree as scientists that it's possible or that it's not possible in either sense, because there is no empirical evidence. We must take that on faith.
Well, I think I don't know. I think you're reading too much into that. I mean, I think that for example, we can tell the difference, right? We can tell the difference between something that's physically tangible and something that is a thought in our heads. And so we do apply. I think, science, when they're examining, for example, the science of neurology is much different than the science of archaeology. So there are distinctions that are to be made between the two. Between two vastly different things within the reality that we work within. But just to go ahead and kind of wrap this up, because we're in the last minute, ultimately what you have to do is you use the information and that you have at hand. That's really the only choice you have. Sure, we can speculate upon other things that we cannot detect or cannot understand empirically, for example, right now. But science, by definition, deals with the empirical study of the natural world around us. Science doesn't really deal with metaphysical questions, and I mean that's a field of study for the philosophers. Science
I'm a spiritualist, so I deal with the empirical study of spirituality, which to me is just as factual as your reality. But that's okay.
Well, maybe you can call us. Maybe you can call us back sometime and give us some of your empirical evidence for the spirituality. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for your call, and we appreciate it. Yeah. Anyway, you have more to say about that, but we're out of time. But it was a heck of a show, and we appreciate it. Ashley, thank you again, as always. Thanks to our tiny little crew. There she is. So we'll be back next time, 4:30 Sunday, this channel, and reruns on Tuesday at 4:30 this channel. Happy solstice, theists we don't hate.